And in this film, I'm going to talk about Amy Beach's Gaelic Symphony, which was composed from 1894 to 1896 and is believed to be the first symphony by an American woman, full stop, and also the first American to quote folk songs as thematic material for a work of this kind. And for us in our autumn 2020 series, we could link back to Bartok and the Concerto for Orchestra that we talked about. That's obviously a work that comes later than this, but it's in that same tradition of use of folk material in a concert work. She was definitely then the first composer to follow Dvorak's practice, and Dvorak's Ninth Symphony, with its African American themes, is a big part of the story of Amy Beach's here. Dvorak quite strongly stated that the Native American and African American music, they were legitimate source material for American composers. But he wasn't universally popular for this view, and Beach was amongst the several who wrote in opposition to this. She herself wrote, "We of the North should be far more likely to be influenced by the old English, Scotch or Irish songs inherited with our literature from our ancestors." She felt that Dvorak really only saw the peaceful, sunny side of African American character and life, not the suffering and heartbreak of slavery. If this debate were happening today, we'd be talking about cultural appropriation, probably. And I think that, along with the gender inequality within Beach's own story, is part of why it's interesting for us to look at this piece. But primarily, it's a very good piece and worth looking at, full stop. Beach's main source of folk material in the symphony was Irish folk tunes, in particular a set of melodies from a folk song collection published in Dublin in 1841. So in a sense, this is a musical response to Dvorak. It's very similar orchestral lineup to Dvorak's Ninth Symphony, and some of how he uses the instruments is reflected by Beach here as well. So we have cor anglais as a solo instrument in the second movement. The tuba, Dvorak only uses the tuba in the second movement of his symphony. Beach uses the tuba in all but the second movement of this one. The piccolo, Dvorak only uses in one movement, Beach only in one as well here. But I think if you listen to the whole work, just in the context of thinking Dvorak 9, just hear some of the overall similarities as to use of the orchestra. The Gaelic Symphony has a programme. It's a musical representation of the struggles and sufferings of the Irish people. Quote, "their laments, their romance, and their dreams." So let's have a quick little look at some of the detail of the movements. The first movement is a pretty traditional sonata form movement. It uses two themes from her own song, "Dark is the Night." It's dramatic, it's fast moving, there's plenty of action for everyone in the orchestra to get involved with. There's some nice little woodwind and horn solos for you to have a try of. Thinking about the second movement, well, reading about this, I find that apparently this was written first as well. It's a monothematic movement using a Gaelic folk song called "The Little Field of Barley." It's a sort of inverted scherzo and trio. The inversion being that the middle section here is the fast musical joke section, really, with the outer parts of the movement being more like the traditional inner trio character, and involving some solo voices as well. There's none of the brass section in this, trumpets, trombone, tuba, but there are decent horn and oboe solos early on, some nice wind ensemble sections as well. But as we said a minute ago, big change of character at the 2/4 section, much more for strings to be doing there, and that cor anglais moment hinted at earlier is in here too. The third movement's a traditional slow movement. It involves two Celtic folk tunes. The first is a lullaby called "The Lively Child," and the second a folk tune titled "Which Way Did She Go?" The two themes are developed independently of each other, and then they're combined in a central development section. Instrumentally, there's an excellent bit of bass clarinet in A. Enjoy that if you're going to try that. There's some quite extensive solo work for the leader, and there's a leader and cello solo duo, as it were, working together. So there's something there for everyone in those sections to try, and perhaps our married couple in the violin and cello sections, that's something to practice at home. But quite a lot more for the leader solo violin later on in movement 2. But it's a beautiful movement for everyone, to be honest. But on to the finale, and it's a strong movement. It's probably my favourite of the whole symphony, and this is all Beech's own themes, and taking some fragments from the first movement as well. This is a real passionate movement, trying to express that passionate character of the Celtic people, as she was talking about in the programme of it. There's a huge, wonderful viola and cello tune as the second subject, and this is certainly the movement for the brass section to try if you have to pick only one movement to have a go at. To me, this is almost reminiscent of a big Rachmaninoff symphony movement. It just keeps going with a fabulous section following fabulous section throughout. So it's terrific, this movement. So the premiere of the piece overall took place on 30th of October 1896, with Emil Power conducting the Boston Symphony Orchestra in Boston's Music Hall, and it's dedicated to that conductor. Boston performed it 4 more times over the next 2 years, and in her lifetime, in Beech's lifetime, it was performed by several US and European orchestras.